Hi guys, and welcome to a battle between the vampirates led by the legendary Park Map up against Analitor, who's in charge of the Beastmen. So let's get this underway. Looks like we are going to have to pause off the bat there as there's a really interesting vanguard rush coming in from the Beastmen. But let's have a little look at Park Map's army. So for the front line, gone nice, cheap and cheerful with zombie pirate deckhand mobs. These ugly, disgusting people will work as a big buffer and a kind of a roadblock. And it looks like in the second line, he's gone for a very interesting pick of Sirens. 2 units, in fact, one with a chevron. Now, these ladies, of course, are ethereal. And the Beastmen really do lack any kind of magic damage, for the most part. So they're going to be a real nice second buffer, allowing the backline to really get its value. And speaking of the backline, we have 1, 2, 3 units of the zombie pirate gunnery mobs. Again, not the most accurate fellows with their little pistols, as you can see. They don't look like they're in the best condition, but they have, 120 pistols aimed at you. Something is going to hit, especially when you have such a big roadblock in front of them. On the flanks, he has 2 units of zombie pirate deckhand mobs with polearms. Nice, cheap and cheerful anti-large, and good at just fending off a lot of centaurs. And you'll kind of expect a lot of centaur play in this matchup. And then in the back, it looks like we do have the Lamprey's Revenge, Rotten Promethean Regiment of Renowned. Super incredibly tanky unit here. And the little guys on top also have shotguns, so they can do a decent little bit of damage pre-combat with some range, and they get in there and they're just a massive pain to deal with. We've also got a little bit of an air force, so 2 cheap units of Fellbats just to hunt down Ungor raiders and harass centaurs with throwing axes and so forth. And in the back we have 3 units of deck droppers. We've not seen these guys too often for quite a long time, apart from in my last video as well. I believe we saw these guys, so maybe there's something I don't know about and there's a change in the meta and these guys are making a comeback, but they can do some decent ranged damage from flying around. I can be pretty much immune from most Beastmen. I mean, they just have to stay away from Ungor raiders and they trade fairly effectively with centaur throwing axes. So overall, very nice build. And let's see what we have for leadership. So we do have a vampire fleet captain here. Looks like, I'm assuming she's just going to be coming with all her nasty heals. Oh, come on. There we go. So we have Taunt, which is very good ability, and Invocation from the Heck, which is kind of what you expect. Taunt, very good overall, and Invocation, just invaluable. And for a leader, someone else we haven't seen that often, which is Direfin herself, up on top of her beautiful, glorious little mount here, looking a lot like, what's her name? Dr. Zoidberg from Futurama. So let's see what spells she's brought. Just Song of Informant, and it looks like that's it. But she is a big terror-causing monster, which, of course, the Beastmen really struggle with. And she's, going to be a pain in the ass to deal with. So let's have a little look at this Beastman build. And I really like what he's done here. So his deployment zone is actually all the way back here. This map isn't that close. But his pretty much 99.9% of his army is in Vanguard modes. Up front, he has Gore Herds mixed in with Gore Herds with shields, some of them having a chevron, some of them being standard. Now, these guys, they're pretty cheap and cheerful, but they will tear apart zombies incredibly quickly. They work in the same way, a lot like Marauders, where they have quite a lot of damage output. So they should be able to tear apart that front line, but the Sirens will be able to be a bit more of a tricky blockade for them. And then at the back, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 units of Ungor raiders who are all hidden at the moment, as they do have Stalk. They can be a pretty decent answer to the flies if they can get in range. And, they don't do that much AP, but if you constantly have that volume of fire coming in, if this front line can protect them, they can do some decent damage to Direfin herself, and also the Lamprey's Revenge. So on either flank, as expected, you do have 2 units of Centaurs. They're going to be trying to swoop around the back and hop on top of those gunners. Quite a nice pick there. And over on the flank, he's been a little bit sneaky and has 2 units of centaurs with throwing axes. You need them in most Beastmen armies. They're anti-large, well, they're not anti-large, sorry, but they do a decent amount of damage versus large with their armor-piercing missiles. In Deep Vanguard, we do have 2 units of Chaos Warhounds going to be coming in the back, and anything else. Oh, 1 very sneaky unit of Harpies over in the distance there. And let's look what they have for their leaderships. They do, in fact, have a Brachyon of Beasts. I'm assuming they're going to be coming with the Manticore Summon and Amber Spear by the looks of it. So yeah, Manticore Summon and Amber Spear. So overall, decent pick. Going to be on foot though. Would probably be a bit better on a chariot, but of course much more expensive. And for leadership, we do have Kazarak One Eye. Someone we barely see in multiplayer, but he does allow himself to have that Vanguard deployment. And, on his little chariot here, he can roll around and cause massive carnage to this back line if he's allowed to get in there. So without further ado, let's stop the waffling and get to the battle. So the Beastmen immediately going to be surging forward as you expect. Going to be charging in, and they will very, very quickly dismantle this zombie pirate deckhand mob front line. But we do have the deck droppers who are going to be moving over. Looks like they're going to be taking up a challenge against the Centicles of Throne Axes, which is a decent pick for them there overall. And let's see how this gets underway. So the Ungors have finally been spotted and they're backing off. But the Gore Herds are charging in, taking a volley to the face, but coming in with their two-handed axes here, and they are going to start tearing apart these zombie pirate deckhand mobs very, very quickly. Now up in the sky here, deck droppers moving out to the flank. Luckily though, these Centicles, for them, they have decided to pull back, trying to get behind the Ungor Raiders, who should give some decent cover and fire. And as you can see, their health is just dropping on this front line. But Direfin is coming in to try and plug that gap, and she's going to be a monster. There's not too much here which is going to be able to take her out. In the distance over here, we can see the 2 units of Chaos Warhounds swooping in. Going to be hopping on top of some zombie pirate deckhand mobs. And overall, the Beastmen doing pretty good. Centicles need to get moving, though. They've started going around this flank, but they need to continue that. And we do have some constant fire coming in the back. So let's get an overarching view of the battlefield. Felbats hopped on top of Ungor Raiders here. Very, very good there. But it looks like there are some Centicles nearby who may be able to countercharge. And along the front line, it looks like the Beastmen are doing incredibly well, apart from wherever the reserves have been pulled in. These Sirens are going to be a pain in the arse. And Direfin has come crashing in. And immediately on the charge, up to 12 kills straight away. Get a summon in there as well, trying to pin in Khazrak One Eye. And the Sirens going to do very good over here. So overall, fairly even matchup so far. We do have those Hounds coming in the distance and the Harpies floating around. So let's get this underway once again. So Sirens, as expected, taking a bit of damage actually, quite surprising there, but as expected they are going to be beating down this Gore Herd fairly successfully. And also Direfin has found a nice juicy target in Khazrak One Eye. He does not want to stay in this engagement, especially with the Lamprey's Revenge in here as well, but it is pinning her in place and allowing both these units of Centicores to get some throwing axes in there. Manticore has been summoned, going to do some very decent AP damage, but Khazrak is getting beat up so bad. But in comes the Manticore, getting some rear attacks actually on Direfin, doing some really decent work overall. Felbats in the background still being a pain in the arse to these Ungor Raiders, but Ungor's not the world's worst in combat. They're not great, but they're not exactly goblins or anything, so they managed to beat back those Felbats fairly comfortably, and in come the Harpies, who will actually be really useful at chasing down those deck droppers. Now, the Khazrak One Eye dropping all his buffs, but he's just outmatched and outclassed by the Lamprey's Revenge. In is having to flee, with some Centicores being sacrificed to plug the gap and trying to hold the Lamprey's Revenge back. Direfin taking a huge amount of damage though from behind from the Feral Manticore, just getting in those rear attacks, of course half in that melee defense. Looks like the Crab did go for a big old butt slam there. Invocation of the Heck coming down though, trying to rescue the situation, and those Throne Axes are doing some really decent damage, but in return the deck droppers are just laying volley after volley into them. Felbats nearly cleared up in the back, but they have managed to put these Ungor Raiders on the back foot for a little while, but now they're going to get that consistent fire coming in, and maybe start taking down the Lamprey's Revenge, which they really need to do, because the front line, so a lot of Beastmen are starting to waver now, but they've done huge damage all across the front line. But as you can see, these Sirens, assisted by some deckhand mobs, are managing to break through. And we do have the Damned Knights Errand Summon, who are going to come charging directly into the back here and popping on top of these Ungor Raiders, which is a very nice pick. They can now just work their way along this line, taking out all that range support. And it looks like we have a big break from the Beastmen here. But in the back, they do have their 2 units of Warhounds fairly healthy, and some Harpies who did manage to chase down and destroy one of those gunnery mobs. So as I had a little inkling at the start of the battlefield that this was going to come down to some of the big monsters and ethereal units versus kind of some hordes of Beastmen. We are starting to get that way. We have a very, well, fairly healthy Direfin left, and a lot of ethereal units roaming around. These damn knights cutting down Ungor Raiders wherever they can, but as you can see, throwing axes are coming in, and those damn Knights Errants will be disappearing fairly shortly, as you can tell by that orange aura there. But Lamprey's Revenge and Direfin are no pushovers at all, and they may be able to carry the day here. In the back, a Vampire Fleet Captain's been dropping some decent Invocation of the Hex, but is now completely surrounded by Hounds and Centicores, and is getting beaten down. The Harpies, on the other hand, are just flying there, floating around, and taking some serious damage to some deck droppers. Really needs to get on hunting those guys down. So Khazrak has managed to rally himself over here, but pretty beat up. He's not going to be too much of an impact on the battle. And all these Gore Herds are returning to the field, which is pretty damn good. But the Rotten Prometheans, a summoned unit of them, in fact, is going to be able to beat them down quite quickly and probably break quite a lot of these guys. These summons really helping out the Vampires here, stabilising what was a very tricky situation, but the power balance is now still pretty damn dead even, actually. And Arcane Conduit going down by Direfin here, taking more rear attacks from another Feral Manticore summon, who does have a Song of Enfrollment on it, lowering its melee attack, but still is doing decent work. We're getting throwing axes in there as well. Direfin could be in deep, deep trouble. She needs to get back to some of her supporting units and try and force off the throwing axes with some of his more mobile troops like these deck droppers. Kazrak, however, did go for a very risky charge into Direfin, maybe baiting out a couple of attacks for her, allowing that Manticore to get those rear attacks. He is now fleeing for the hills, though. Did drop Deadly Onslaught and Apocalyptic Vision, which did affect the Feral Manticore. So actually, very nice play getting in there, dropping that buff, and then getting out of there. And an Amber Spear coming from the Brave Shaman does fell the Mighty Crab and the Direfin herself. So all of a sudden, power balance goes massively in favour of the Beastmen. However, they still have some very unique tools here. The Lamprey's Revenge, especially if they keep getting healed up by the Vampire Fleet Captain, will be able to tank so much of this army. It's so beat up, the Beastmen. They're all going to start breaking anytime they face any big scary monsters. And of course, that is all the vampires have left. We have some Sirens who have gone up a chevron, beating down some Centaurs, and deck droppers will be coming back into the fray. These Harpies could have been used to chase these guys down quite effectively, but instead they are getting shot, and there's still some decent ammo on those guys, which could be very pivotal in this end game sequence. So we do have Kazrak One Eye rolling around over some polearms. Of course, they are anti-large, but he's not going to be sitting around letting them hit him. So he's swooping around back and forth, hunting these guys down who are starting to deteriorate now. We have some Ungor Raiders, who have completely shattered off the field, but a lot of the rest of the Beastmen army is being fairly low and come back, and they're getting a ton of shots into these Sirens now, just trying to keep their morale low so that they do disappear, because obviously these arrows aren't going to be doing too much HP damage. But in come the Centaurs with a thundering charge, trying to get to grips with these ghostly females. And they're trying their best here, but they are going to be struggling a little bit. Sirens aren't taking too much damage, but they are wavering, and that's what you need. You need that constant drain on their health. Lamprey's Revenge, though, still very, very powerful here, coming through and scaring off some Goreherds. He really needs to get over here and rescue this Vampire Fleet Captain, whose healing could be absolutely pivotal. Although, it looks like the Fleet Captain's doing pretty damn good by herself here, even surrounded by all these horrible monsters. Is almost, in fact, has broken off some Chaos Warhounds, and in comes the Lamprey's Revenge for that, like, just slapping those Chaos Warhounds around with their big meaty claws, tearing them apart, and this entire section of the Beastmen army is now routing, and this could really be a good way back in for Park Map and the Vampirates here, rallying behind the Lamprey's Revenge, getting some decent shots with the deck droppers, and continuously using that healing of the Vampire Fleet Captain. Sirens have found a home on top of the Brave Shaman, but the Brave Shaman is no pushover and is slowly dragging those guys down, and there is even some rear shots coming in from the Ungor Raiders. Over in the distance, we do have some very beat-up zombie pirate deckhand mobs. We have Kazrak, who's incredibly tired, wavering, and just huge amount of damage sustained to him. How much health is he on? He's actually only got 400 health yet, but he is returning to rally his troops and fight to the death. So deck droppers managing to obliterate some Chaos Warhounds and completely shattering those guys. And it looks like a lot of the Beastmen are now fully shattering, not just breaking. The Lamprey's Revenge seem an unstoppable monstrosity at the moment, as another invocation of the heck does go down, and these guys are simply going to be able to march forward and tear apart these Ungor Raiders. Looks like an Amber Spear did come in by the Brave Shaman onto the Vampire Fleet Captain, but it was a bit of a swing and a miss, and I can only really see the Vampires winning this here. What do the Beastmen have which can slow down and stop such hateful crabs? And the crabs dragging themselves forward on the bloody claws, drooling as they go, and these Ungor Raiders are not going to be fast enough, or it looks like they have given up the chase. They have turned to engage some Centaurs, counter-charging those throwing axes, and these guys are not long for this world at all. The Beastmen are trying their best, getting some shots in on the deck droppers, doing some decent damage there. It looks like he's been trying to pick off this Vampire Fleet Captain, maybe break the leadership of these crabs, try and get some army losses going, and then completely surround them, which is probably the best bet right now. Kazrak, very risky charge, does drop Deadly Onslaught, but immediately gets shotgun blasted in the face by the Lamprey's Revenge, shattering him completely. And now the power balance is still allegedly in the Beastmen's favour, but I think this is going to be game over, and it's simply going to be a matter of picking apart these Ungor Raiders very slowly. Lamprey's Revenge just feasting on some poor Ungors. This guy, he's strutting out of there, but now he starts fleeing, and it's a little bit too late. It looks like he does get both his arms completely severed. Glorious blood for the Blood God all over the battlefield now. Power Balance is now starting to realise what's going on and has moved in favour of the Vampirates. Brave Shaman, the last thing really keeping this Beastmen army together, has got a taunt on him now. And down he goes, and that is going to be army losses surely sent in a second. With their leadership gone, there we go. Power bands just start sweeping in favour there of them, and that is going to be game. So very, very well played. Both players there, and a Pyrrhic victory. Let's go to the end stats. So, only a Pyrrhic victory, so, you know, nothing too crazy there, but an incredibly good game, which is always like to see. So, big shout out to ParkMap, who has played on this channel before. Really awesome guy, and a big thanks to him for sending in such an awesome replay. Now, I actually really liked both armies. I think the Beastmen army, I love the rush build, especially the use of Kazrak, who can rush himself, and they really managed to swarm and get a big advantage early on. The one problem with this army is there's not too much anti-large. If there was any crab rushes and so forth, this army could really, really struggle. Now, the mass fire of Ungor Raiders could be used to help bring down the crabs, and as we could see, they did manage to bring down Direfin herself, but they really struggled up against the Lamprey's Revenge. So maybe one more unit of Centaur with throwing axes, or it's really hard. Beastmen really do struggle against those large tools, but overall, very nice build and very close battle overall. ParkMap's build. Now, I'm no master of the Vampire Coast. I don't actually have the DLC, but I have played them multiple times, and there's a few picks in here I really did enjoy. So one, seeing Direfin, it's always fantastic, and she does have a very good niche pick in this matchup, being a big, horrible, terror-causing monster, really tough to deal with. But the Sirens, 116 kills and 59 kills, but the fact they managed to hold up the Beastmen for so incredibly long, break so many units with their causing of fear and terror and so forth, the Beastmen just really didn't have any answers to those ladies right there, and of course the Lamprey Revenge always doing very good. Now, it's pretty interesting seeing deck droppers used. I think they did pretty good, 32, 20 and 39, and they really managed to neuter some of those throwing axes, which is, I guess, what they're mainly brought for. Now, if you guys have had big success with the deck droppers, please do let me know in the description below, because I haven't seen them used much at all until last week and then recently. I know, like, way back in the day, people used to bring them all the time. They were very, very powerful, but they've been heavily nerfed since then, so I wonder if there's been any changes to these guys to make them really viable once again. Overall, some nice fellback play as well, shutting down those Ungor Raiders, and, you know, at least keeping Direfin alive for as long as possible. But overall, very awesome game. I very much enjoyed watching it and commentating on it. Hope you guys did as well. If you did, please do leave a like, subscribe, and all that good, awesome stuff. Now, if you do want to support the channel in any way... Oh, sorry, my alarm just going off there for my dinner. If you did enjoy the video, please like and subscribe, and if you do want to support in any other way, I do have a Patreon just down below. I should hopefully be doing a stream tomorrow. We're going to be streaming a best of 5 between me and Ninja Penguin, which I have previously recorded as my internet's been a bit dodgy, so I just want to try a live stream, see how it works, and then we'll get back onto the usual routine of tournaments and so forth. So until next time, guys, peace, and stay awesome.